Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Our guest today gives a perspective on a very unique trade. Siobhan Colleen is a former entertainment rigger with a ton of great insight on what it takes to make it in that industry, what's involved with the day-to-day duties, and what she loved most about it. We talk all about the value of college, the ROI of certifications, and her incredible startup industry explorers. We also have a very real conversation about what it means to be a woman in the industry, where she gives real-life examples of some of the things that she endured when coming up in the business. This episode is not for the faint of heart, and Siobhan transparently warns of predatory behavior that exists in the world today. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on the word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a second to rate it, review it, and share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Siobhan Colleen. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Super excited about the guest I have sitting right in front of me, virtually, of course. But Siobhan, welcome to the show today. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really great to be here, Josh.
Really excited about this conversation. For those of the audience that doesn't know who you are, can you just kind of tell us your story, who you are, where you came from, what you're doing, how you got here, what's your social security number, credit card numbers, all that stuff?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My first pet. You got it. So my name is Siobhan Colleen. I'm from Southern California. And when I was about 10 years old, I saw the Dreams Come True fireworks spectacular at Disneyland, celebrating their 50th anniversary. And that was a moment where I thought, wow, I want to do this. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew what the end result looked like. So I had my sights set on becoming an Imagineer. And through middle school and high school, I was trying to figure out what it meant to be an Imagineer and how I was going to get there. So, by the time I was a junior in high school, I had strongly considered being either an engineer, business major, or a theater major. Also, in my high school career, because I was always in advanced placement courses and in advanced classes, there was a very strong push for college. Nobody ever suggested to me that the military was an option or that the trade schools were an option or that just going into the workforce was an option. Nobody suggested anything other than college to me. So I eventually decided that I was going to be a theater major. So I went to Cal State Fullerton. At that time, I was a stagehand and freelancing for a production labor company. One day as a stagehand, I look up and I see people walking on beams of 70 feet or so in the air. And I thought, that looks dangerous. How do I do that? I want to do that too. So I learned that job is called being a rigger. And specifically, the ones who are climbing around, they're called up riggers or high riggers. So that's what I wanted to do. And so when I was a sophomore in college, that's when I started ground rigging. So you do everything that you set everything up on the floor. A year later, I became an up rigger. And I had also sent in an application for the Disneyland Resort to work in their technical services department as a stage technician. So as a junior in college, going through my theater major, learning about technical production and design, I got a job offer in I think it was spring semester of my junior year of college. I got a job offer to work at the Disneyland Resort. So as someone who wants to maybe become an Imagineer, this was like the best day of my life. So I started working there. It was great. So the thing about it though was in my junior and senior year of college, I was thinking to myself, what is the point of college? Why am I even here? Why am I getting this degree? Should I have chosen a different degree? Are theater degrees just useless? I'm 26 now, and after being in entertainment for about 7 years or so, getting a theater degree is not useless at all. Getting any kind of college degree is not useless. It really depends on how you spend your time there and how you apply yourself when you're there and outside of school. So, but regardless, I didn't need a college degree to work for Disneyland. I didn't need a college degree to become an uprigger. I didn't need a college degree to then become a fall protection and rescue trainer or a technical writer or a project manager. Because by the time I had reached a point in my career where I was applying to be a project manager, this is my trajectory. Let me back up a little bit. Become a rigger, start working at Disneyland, graduate from college, become a fall protection and rescue instructor, then start doing technical writing, writing stuff for the program curriculum, writing standardized operation procedures, writing rescue plans for different shows, different companies, different training programs, continue freelancing rigging at the same time, gain more certifications, apply to be a project manager. Did I need a degree to become a project manager? Not at all. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell. I became a project manager in 2019, 4 months before COVID really shut down our entire industry. And then I became a project manager with no projects. Then I had to pivot. I started teaching myself Google Analytics, social media, and brand management, among other things. I didn't go to school for marketing. I didn't go to school for content writing, content creation, video editing, or anything. This is just what I taught myself in the wake of a pandemic to survive, because I had to. Because if I wasn't going to be a project manager, well, I wanted to be useful for that company I was working for anyway. Sorry, my dog is just being crazy right now.
That's okay. That's common these days, with these podcasts and being done virtually. Siobhan, that's an incredible story, and for 26 years old, it sounds like the knowledge and experience that you've gained through all of this different stuff is just, it's fascinating. And I'm sorry, usually during these stories, I like to stop and interrupt and ask some questions, but I was just so intrigued by the way that you told it, and going from one thing to another, I didn't want to stop you. So I want to kind of pick it apart a little bit, and let's go back. So you knew you wanted to be an Imagineer. This stuck with you through high school, and obviously you did well in high school, and you were. Here's where I'm confused. Was the college path the only one brought up to you, or were you pushed toward that path?
I feel like you're asking the same thing. I was pushed towards college by my teachers and advisors, and it really was the only path presented to me.
Okay. All right. And the reason I ask is because I like to make the association of the skilled trades, right? Nobody really these days pushes somebody into the skilled trades, at least not in that high school setting, right?
Exactly.
But in the same breath, it's not like they're completely crapped on, right? They're just disregarded. They're almost forgotten, and I like to say, one of the things that I heard is the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And we can't be indifferent about the skilled trades. So when I ask you if it was something that you were pushed towards, or an option that was just presented to you, there's a small minor difference there, because I was pushed towards college. To everybody's dismay, I said no thank you. I had other plans, but it felt like it was more than an option, right? It was a requirement. And I think college has its place, as you stated. I'm not against college whatsoever. I just think that the ROI needs to be there, and we probably need to gain a little bit more insight from kids, in the high school setting as to how they define success, because that's going to determine the path that they take and they follow for the rest of their life. So, so you never.
Let's talk about ROI.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'd love to bring up the fact that if someone asked me, what do I need to learn in order to become either an entertainment rigger or a rope access technician or an instructor of these things? For entertainment, we have something called the ETCP certification. You can get it as an ETCP certified arena rigger or theater rigger. If you want to get into electrics, you could become an ETCP certified electrician. Okay. The cost to take that test, I believe, is about $600 per test, roughly. And I think if you take one test, then your second test, you get $100 off. If you're a union worker or if you're associated with one of their like partnership companies, such as I believe Encore or PRG, or you'll have to look at the website because I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you're associated with them, then either you get reimbursed for taking that test or you can get a discount. So, all right, that's a certification you can earn. A rope access certification, where you're looking about spending maybe $1,500 to $2,000 for that certification. So what are we at now? Like roughly less than $5,000? How much is a semester of college on average? I don't even know anymore. I think when I went to Cal State Fullerton, it was like maybe $6,000 or more per semester. And I went for 8 semesters. Mm-hmm. And that's because I didn't change my major. So I didn't stay in school longer than I needed to. But yeah, that return on investment, though, if you are pursuing certifications, it seems like a lot. But think about how that contrasts to a semester of college. So think about this. Here's an idea that I think we should present to more students. Go for the certifications, go for the skilled trades. And if you want to do college down the road, oh man, going the trades route is a great way to build your wealth so that you can afford college down the road. It's a great way to build experience so that you can be, what am I trying to say? You can have there's different scholarship opportunities, right? If you've got to write an essay for a scholarship, I would rather write an essay about my time working for Nick Walinda's Volcano Walk Live than write an essay about, my computer-aided drafting class as a sophomore in college. Yeah. I think one of those things is more interesting than the other. Not to knock my CAD class, because those classes are really important. But I mean,
of course,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think I'm rambling a little bit.
No, you make some excellent points. And to answer your question, when you first, started your rambling, awesome rambling, by the way, the average, I believe the last time I checked, the average tuition for an in-state university is about $25,000 a year. So that breaks down to pretty close to what you said, about $6,000 a semester. But as you and I know, we can do math. We went to high school. That's about $100,000, right? By the time that you graduate college, which is the path that most people take, right? And then they rely on that college degree to go get a job. So they're starting in the workforce $100,000 in debt. Now, to your counterpoint, the ROI of that is a lot more difficult to achieve depending on what you go to college for and, all of that and even how long it takes you. I mean, a medical degree is going to take you longer than 4 years, right? And you're going to be in probably Absolutely. A lot more debt. But, the certification route, let me ask you this, that the very first certification that you mentioned, what was it, a ETCP? What is the average starting wage for somebody in that role with that certification? Do you know?
So that can depend. When you're an entertainment rigger, your wages can depend on your experience level. It can depend on whether you have that certification or not. It can depend on whether you are a ground rigger or an up rigger or a lead rigger. And even beyond that, you've got project managers and you've got production riggers, all kinds of stuff. So on a very basic level, the range is probably maybe between like $17 an hour to $22 an hour as a ground rigger. As an uprigger, it depends on the company you're working for, the region of the United States you're in. That can go for like, $25 an hour all the way up to $40 an hour, just depending on where you're at, who you're working for. Having that certification, it can, depending on the company you're working for, you can see $1 more per hour, or if you're getting paid per day, you might get like a $50 per day bump or $100 per day bump. So for example, what I mean by that is like, if you're working for $350 per day for a 10-hour day, but you have that certification, that company you're working for might bump you up to $400 a day or $450 a day.
That makes sense. And so where I'm going with that is, I think you said it was around $600 for that certification, right? So You're talking about achieving an ROI after 3 days of work, 4 days maybe, depending on the wage range that you enter into. 4 days is, and then you've achieved an ROI, right? And now you start, you pay off that certification and you start to build your wealth, and you earn while you learn and all of that good stuff. When you compare that,
and there's something that I haven't mentioned when we're talking about ROI. We're just covering certification costs. That doesn't, cover costs for traveling to the company where you're getting your certification, potentially having a hotel or car rental or flight if you need to, if you're not getting that certification locally. Also, especially for trades, because everything's hands-on, everything's very much tool-based and PPE-based. So, you may need to purchase a harness for $300. You may need to purchase a Y lanyard for, I don't even know how much they are, but it's been a while. I need to revamp my own kit. So I'll be more familiar with the prices later this week. But yeah, so you may need to purchase your own tools. So those are more costs to consider when you're looking at ROI. But again, it's very quick to get your return on investment and exceed it. And if you don't know what you want to major in college, but you think you want to go to college, maybe go the skilled trades route, figure it out from there. Maybe you hate being an apprentice for carpentry. Maybe you hate being an apprentice for, electrician work. Maybe you don't really like being an entertainment rigger. Who knows? But you're not going to know unless you go try these things. So while you're trying these things, make money while you're doing it. And then when you figure it out, then go to college, then go get your undergrad. Or you might even be able to go straight into grad school. I have actually worked with someone who doesn't have his bachelor's degree, but he has his master's degree in theater technology, because in lieu of a bachelor's degree, he had like 10 to 15 years worth of experience that he was bringing to the table.
That's wild. And that's such a good point that you bring up too, right? Because once you figure out, what you like and what you don't like, and you can use that to determine the trajectory that you're going to take, in your life, then at that point, college becomes more of a tool to hone your skills, right? The skills that that you're going to need. Whereas compared to when you're 18 years old and you're being asked to pick what you want to do the rest of your life off of a list with 1,600 other things, it makes it a little bit more difficult, right? And, getting back to the ROI thing for a second, you're absolutely right. There's other things that need to be taken into consideration. But even if those costs amount to $5,000, $10,000, I mean, you're talking about being able to achieve an ROI in less than a year, right? Whereas, I think the starting wage for a college graduate entering into the workforce is somewhere around $38,000 a year, right? And if you go to a university and you drop this $100,000, $100,000, no big deal. I didn't have to pay for it, at least not right now. You're talking about an ROI that's going to take you 3 years if you don't do anything except pay down that school loan debt, right? And obviously, when you graduate from college, you're expected to enter into the workforce, have your own place, all of this stuff. So how much are you really bringing in on an annual basis that can be considered toward your ROI? So the point I want to get across.
Can I interrupt
yes,
here
please.
just to say, those expectations, I think, they're older expectations. They're based on older generations and based on what was accessible to those older generations, because, that houses were not, didn't cost as much as they do today. Minimum wage doesn't increase at the same rate of inflation. And not even with at the same rate of inflation with college tuition. So our younger generations, it's more difficult to be able to have a house on your own. It is more difficult to get to that level.
It's outdated advice.
Right, exactly. And so, we need to not have those expectations of ourselves. It's okay if right when you graduate from college, you studied. It's okay to graduate from college and still live with 4 other roommates. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to graduate from college and live with your parents. I lived with my parents until I was maybe 23, 24. That was like 2 years ago. It's just kind of like the reality that we live in. So, I guess what I'm saying for our listeners is don't be so hard on yourselves. You're doing better than you think. It's going to be okay.
Good message, which is going to bring us full circle back to the skilled trades, right? And part of the show is highlighting some of the careers that people might not know are skilled trades, which is ultimately why I asked you to come on the show, right? Because entertainment rigging isn't something that you commonly hear about, not unless you're in that realm or, in that circle and you've been down that path or directed towards it. So entertainment rigging, can we go into a little bit more depth as to what that means and what it looks like on a day-to-day basis when you're in the thick of it?
Absolutely. So it depends on what you're installing. There's temporary installs, there's permanent installs, there's arena, theater, convention center, EDC, yeah, what? Electric Daisy Carnival events, raves. That was the word I really wanted. Raves, crazy outdoor events, corporate ballroom events. There's so many applications where we need entertainment riggers. And what they are specifically responsible for are the apparatuses that are suspending the rest of the equipment. So riggers are going to be responsible for assembling aluminum box trusses and steel cable and shackles and polyester round slings. And then you get that apparatus to a working height, right about like your shoulder height. And so the rest of the other departments are going to start hanging their lights off of your truss. They're going to hang their audio speakers, or we call them line arrays. They're going to start hanging video wall, and you're going to raise that truss a little higher, a little higher, a little higher. Everybody's going to build upon whatever equipment they're installing. And then you get it to trim height, which is like the final look. So when you go see a concert or you go to a conference and you see the trussing and you see all the lights and the video wall and the projector and the screens, that's what rigging is. Okay. It's everything above the rest of the equipment, making the concert, making the event look super badass.
It's a good explanation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So
what did you enjoy most about that when you did it?
Oh my gosh. My favorite project, my very favorite project was a permanent install in Planet Hollywood, because it was outside of my comfort zone. I was used to temporary arena style installs, and I was going into uncharted territory for myself. So a permanent theatrical install for a, what do they call it? Oh my gosh, what are the shows in Vegas called when the artist is there for a while?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't get out
residency
much.
show, a residency show. Oh my gosh, man. Anyway,
got there.
Yes, it had so many challenges. I don't think there was a single day during that install when I felt like a competent person. I'm a very intelligent individual, but there were so many moments where I made a decision or I made a call and, it wasn't the right call. It wasn't the right call at the time, but later on, after troubleshooting some more, the powers to be decided that what I suggested was the best way. But it was challenging and I learned so much, and there's so much more that needs to be considered when you're doing a permanent install. You're going to be working with an engineering department much, much more. And same goes for outdoor structures. If you're doing an outdoor event, you're also going to want to be getting some consulting from engineers, because you've got, high winds that you need to consider. You need to consider possible thunder and lightning storms. You need to consider all of the elements. So I think just any sort of challenge with that regard is my favorite part about rigging. It's a beautiful blend between physics and art.
Oh, that is awesome. Physics and art. That's going to go on the clip. No, that's a great way to explain it. And, I love that you brought that up, because a lot of the people that I talk to in and out of the skilled trades thrive on challenges, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to grow. All of us, we want to grow in one way, shape, or form or another or whatever. And challenging ourselves is the only way that we do it, right? And so that's why I love the skilled trades so much, because it gives you the opportunity to challenge yourself, not only with your hands, but as you alluded to, with your mind, because there's this perception that exists around the trades, any trade, and I'm sure rigging is no different, that it's a lot of hands-on work, which means, the perception is that it's not mindful work. But nothing could be further from the truth. Go ahead, interject.
I like to joke around that entertainment rigging is Fisher Price engineering. Because what really makes, I think there's a lot of things that make a great rigger, but not including soft skills, not including, leadership skills. I think what makes a really great rigger is one who has a really firm grasp on structural beam analysis, just very basic level beam analysis and geometry. That's just physics 101.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can you don't have to know calculus. In rare occasions, do you need to know trigonometry? That's super rare. Very, very rare. I don't know that I've ever used trigonometry. Although if you want to know, like if I have a bridle, so I've got a wire rope cable meeting another wire rope cable, and I've got a certain angle and I want to find the tension between each of these bridle legs. That's algebra. That's basic algebra. When you're trying to find those forces, where does trigonometry even come into play? Trigonometry comes into play when you're looking at fleet angles, anything to do with angles that you're trying to figure out. That's really when trigonometry comes into play. But even then, that's all theoretical. And if you're doing an actual install, especially if you're installing a very, very heavy show and you're really pushing the limits of not pushing the limits, but you're coming close to allowable limits with your equipment or with the building that you're hanging everything off of, you're going to want to use load cells. And load cells are going to attach at every single motor point, and they're going to tell you exactly how much force is seen at that motor point. So, we can do theoretical math all we want, when we can do theoretical math when we're designing our structures to try to be as safe as possible. But then there's reality. Then there's reality of what happens when you've got even a single leg of truss or just a run of truss and you've got like 5 motors attached to it. What if you're raising that truss, but one motor is going slightly, like 1 foot per second or 0.5 feet per second slower than the rest of the motors? Now all those other motors are going to start seeing more force than that slower motor. So there goes your theory. There goes your theoretical math. So what I'm saying is you don't have to know calculus and you don't have to be an engineer to be a rigger.
And I have to ask, if you don't mind, I got to interject. I have to ask because hearing you talk, I mean, it's clearly a very complex task. This is not a career that's just, hey, I'm here, I don't have an education, what do I do? Right? But I'm curious what the training process is, because all the points that you just made, I mean, it takes a very intelligent individual, which I have that belief throughout the trades, which is another perception that
Yes.
I like to harp on. HVAC technicians and electricians and contractors, etc., all have specialized forms of intelligence. And listening to you talk, yours is becoming evident, at least with this regard. So if you don't need college for this, what does the training look like?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think a lot of people are at least familiar with OSHA regulations. We've got construction, general industry, maritime industry, and agriculture. So where does entertainment fall within those regulations? General industry at best. Other than that, we're not really the most standardized industry. However, we do have an ANSI accredited program. We have a technical standards program. So if you want, and I can share the link with you and your listeners if they're curious, you can go to ESTA, ESTA, TSP, and you can download ANSI accredited entertainment standards. However, I don't believe there is a standard on training. And while we do have the ETCP program, that's a certification program. And if you want to learn about that program, it will tell you how the test is structured. There are, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it lists things that you need to know in order to successfully complete the test and earn your certification. Other than that, there really isn't a standardized training process, at least not like you would think of an OSHA 30-hour, or not like you might think of a GWO or SPRAT certification, which begs the question, how do I get this knowledge in order to pass the ETCP test? Or how do I get the knowledge to be a good rigger? There are books you can read, and there are companies that provide online courses. And we saw a big trend towards online courses during COVID, because if we're not installing shows because our entire industry has been shut down because we can't we can't gather as a crowd, well, those companies had to pivot. So they started offering more online classes, which is, I think, one of the best things to have happened to our industry. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And among those companies, some of the classes that are offered between them are scaffolding and outdoor structures, rigging math, advanced rigging math, basic rigging, basic ground rigging, fall protection for entertainment. There's all kinds of classes that you can take virtually. And if you're really interested, I highly recommend getting into it. I don't believe we have something like an apprenticeship or journeyman program, which, and so in entertainment, there are unions. We have the IATSE union, and then we have privately owned companies. So you don't have to be a union member to do this work, and vice versa. So again, there's no real standard training process or training program or apprenticeship program the way you might see in other skilled trades, but there are resources available to you if you want to learn more about entertainment rigging specifically.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like, it's kind of a combination of some kind of a formalized training, right? And then a lot of hands-on experience.
Mostly hands-on, yeah.
and it sounds like you're also, the industry is also making strides in increasing the type of education that they offer, and maybe the exposure as a result, which I think is also great. Once you get on site though, and you start to work with a team, I know you said there's not like a formal apprenticeship program, but are there how are the people in the trade? Are there informal mentorship, hey, come watch what I do, let me show you kind of relationships?
Yes. Um, there are informal mentorships, absolutely. A lot of getting a job. How do I want to phrase this? I think most people who get jobs get them based on referrals, AKA it's about who you know. So, a lot of times you might see someone who is training up their little brother. They're starting to bring their little brother on site, or someone is training their friend who rock climbed with them and now they want to get into industrial type climbing. There's definitely informal mentorship. I don't even want to say opportunities because that kind of makes it sound formal, but my problem with informal mentorships is that I have an experience. That's how I got into entertainment rigging, was through an informal mentorship. The first person I approached blew me off and said, "No, I'm not interested in training you." And so then the next person I approached agreed to train me. And, I don't want to get too into it, but one day I was like, "Hey, what made you want to take a chance on me? What made you want to train me?" Is it because I catch on to concepts really quickly? Am I a quick learner? Is it because I'm really enthusiastic or I work really hard? Like, what was it that made you want to take a chance on me and mentor me? You want to know his answer?
Kind of. Now.
You want to know? You want to guess what his answer was?
Not really. I don't want to be wrong about this.
Oh, yeah. So he said, "Honestly, I just wanted to stare at your tits, and I figured you would get bored at some point and life would move on." And I'm like, wow,
that's messed up.
Can I cuss?
Yeah.
That was degrading as fuck.
Yeah.
And you know what? That makes you think, well, why am I here? Am I here because I'm pretty? Am I on this job because someone's trying to sleep with me? It makes you question your own merit. It makes you question your own sense of self-worth. And, that particular mentor here, Mentorship 101. If you get a mentor, maybe you can be friends, maybe, but don't allow sexual activity into that mentorship. I was 19 years old and I thought to myself, wow, he's 16 years older than me. I must be so smart and so mature. This is awesome. And, I'm not going to knock relationships where there's a wide age gap. My partner and I are 10 years apart. However, you have to be able to recognize signs of manipulation, control, narcissistic personality disorder. You have to be able to recognize when your situation may not be in your best interest, when it may be, it's just not good for your mental health. Man, I said I didn't want to get into it, but here I am getting into it.
It's important. It's important.
It's super, yeah.
And I think that it's especially my listeners, because listen, I talk to a lot of women in the trades. And so this is a topic that comes up, a lot, actually, more than it should in this day and age. Yeah. And so I have no problem with you getting into it. I think that it's important and people should take it to heart and recognize that. With that being said, I have to ask, in the entertainment rigging industry specifically, is it a male-dominated industry?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were kind of a minority as a woman doing that profession?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. During the mentorship, this person, my mentor, would make me feel guilty for pretty much everything. He often didn't have nice things to say to me. And I always thought, well, my performance reflects on him as a professional. So he just wants me to be better. And I'm sure there's a lot of truth to that, but at the same time, he wouldn't let other people try to teach me something. He wouldn't let other people try to show me something on the job site. I once approached someone and said, "Hey, I really like your shirt. I feel like there's more to you than just being a rigger. Like, what do you do for fun? And this guy had a tropical Hawaiian shirt on with like, like a Star Wars shirt. It was cool. It was a cool shirt. I was just asking him. I wasn't hitting on him. I'm just being friendly, being like, hey, man, what do you do when you're not working? So apparently my mentor from afar was giving this guy the stink eye. He was mad dogging him. And the guy was like, I don't know, I'm just a boring person, and walks away from me. He didn't tell me that was the interaction he had with my mentor until years later. So, it's really unfortunate. Yeah,
What's the biggest thing?
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing that you learned from that whole situation? It sounds like there was, and forgive me, but it sounds like in the beginning there was a little bit of a lack of awareness because you didn't expect that, right? That's not something that anybody should ever have to expect. And so, but at some point I have to imagine your guard went up, right? And you walked away with some valuable life insight.
A lot of valuable life insight.
Yeah.
The turning point for me was, so leading up to the turning point when we would be sexually active, I requested that he keep our personal and professional lives separate, that he didn't tell people we were sleeping with each other. And he did not respect that boundary. He told other people that we were sleeping together. So then, in moments of intimacy, he would call me the one. That's a big thing to say to someone. And I would always say, no, we're just friends with benefits. We're never going to be anything serious. There's no potential for marriage or kids between us. That's not what this is. But I would continue engaging in sexual activity because I don't know, I was dumb or not strong enough to walk away and end it. Maybe I feared being lonely. And there's, so if you repeatedly tell someone something and they're kind of in denial about it, you got to walk away. If someone is repeatedly disrespecting you or disrespecting your boundaries, you got to walk away. And part of like narcissism or people with those personality traits is that they start small, they start grooming you. So, it may seem like behavior that is fine or isn't noticeable, not noticeably bad, but then they push that limit. They push it until they completely have control and manipulation over you. And so then the tipping point, I was attracted to someone. I wanted to be in a serious relationship with this person, which meant having, the potential for getting married and having kids. And I didn't, another thing with like any kind of relationship is you just have to be upfront about your intentions. Don't be shy about anything. Don't be afraid of someone lashing out on you. And if they lash out on you, they're not someone that you want to be connected with in any way anyway. Yeah. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'm done fooling around with this person. I want a serious relationship with this other guy. And I didn't end it with my mentor. I didn't say, hey, we're not fooling around anymore. So he called me one morning and I was like, oh, I'm driving home. He's like, what? But where are you? Oh, I was on a date. And he hung up on me. And this led to, at some point, I was over talking to him in person and at his condo, picking something up of mine. I don't even remember what I was there for. We get into a heated yelling argument, and he has pictures of us having sex on his phone. And he starts swiping through the photos, and he goes, I'm going to show these to this employer, this person, that person, and you're never going to rig again. That was intimidating as a 20-year-old. I was scared. I skipped a lot of class because I was going to college at the time. And I declined a lot of work because I was afraid that people hated me. I was afraid people were going to ostracize me at work. I was afraid that if something bad happened, like if I fell in my fall protection and then needed to be rescued, that people would leave me for dead. Like, these were things I believed. And I was also extremely codependent on my serious partner for everything. I was very codependent on him for my happiness, and it was too much for him. And so months down the road, that guy broke up with me, which is, that was great because it forced me to learn how to be an independent person. It forced me to crawl out of my state of deep, deep depression. It forced me to rebuild my confidence and rebuild my self-worth, and to get away from my paranoid thoughts. I was so paranoid at that time in my life. It was a really awful time. And so, I think if you're gonna do an informal mentorship, keep the sexual activity out of it, especially because, unfortunately, in today's day and age, women are going to be looked at, and I'm looked at as the promiscuous one, not the 36-year-old who groomed me, but the 19-year-old who thought it was a good idea. Oh, but they're 18, they're 19, they're an adult, they're legal. No, your prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until you're 25 or 26. Okay? Just because someone is legally an adult doesn't mean that they are the most mature person. And yes, there are very, very intelligent, very mature 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. But at the same time, it's easy. That's still an impressionable age. And I don't say that like I'm someone's mom or aunt or whatever. I say that from experience. These are the things I would tell myself if I could go back in time and talk to 19-year-old me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame, that surrounds that time in my life. I also want to share that because our sex was consensual, and the photos, he asked to take photos of me. He asked to take those photos. And I said it made me uncomfortable, but I agreed that he could take them, but then we would look at them together and then immediately delete them. And I didn't know that deleted photos could be recovered from your phone. So I didn't tell this story for at least 5 years. I didn't tell this story because I wasn't molested and I wasn't raped. So I felt like I had no say in my own experience. And yet this ex-mentor of mine was so sour about the whole situation, he slandered my name, and he probably still slanders me to this day, telling people she doesn't know what she's talking about. Oh, watch her mess up her career, and just the nastiest things. I don't even know. I don't need to know. It's none of my business what he thinks of me anymore. So that's my story.
Wow, and I'm so glad that you shared that, because this is valid. I mean, it sounds like what you took away from that kind of helped you grow personally, right? At the end of the day, I mean, in the moment, in the circumstance, it was probably one of the worst things, if not the worst thing that you had to go through, but now looking back, as so often happens in the decisions we make in our life, it enables us to not make the same decisions again. But in your case, you're helping the people now that are listening to this show recognize what you didn't recognize then. And hopefully they can use that to get beyond that, right? And not have that same experience. So anybody listening now, I hope that you took a lot away from Siobhan's story that she just told, because, and of course, I'm not trying to deter anybody from getting into the trades, especially women. We need women in the trades.
We need women in the trades.
But
y'all, I will be your mentor. Reach out to me. I am happy to help you. I am happy to point you in the right direction. I'm happy to make connections. I'm happy to show you resources that are going to help you. Please, don't let someone manipulate you. Don't feel like, if you are in that situation where you have a mentor, don't be, and if they are being disrespectful to you, don't be afraid to find a new mentor. Don't be afraid that your career is going to be ruined because your only in is disrespectful, and nobody has time for that in their lives.
No.
Anybody listening to this, everybody, I believe, has the right to be respected. Okay. And I think that's a trend that we're seeing today is we're seeing more people get called out on their disrespect, and we're seeing more people being held accountable. Look at the Chauvin trial that just happened. So we need more women. We need more diversity. We need not just diversity. Okay. Diversity isn't just checking a box. It's not saying, oh, we need a Latino, we need a woman, we need an African American, we need a Jamaican. It's not checking boxes. It's what diversity brings into any culture, any job site is a new perspective, a different perspective. Because when you have multiple perspectives, you are going to be challenged. Your ideas are going to be challenged. And that's the best thing, because when your ideas are challenged and you take in new perspectives, you're going to reach a better solution. It doesn't matter if you're rigging. It doesn't matter if you're in marketing. It doesn't matter if you are, a business consultant. Diversity is key. And inclusion, I love the way that someone describes this. Diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance.
I like
that. So if someone, we need input from people of multiple backgrounds. So, and again, we need more women in the trades because we need to see these sexual harassment claims decrease. Absolutely. We need to see harassment on all fronts decrease. And I believe we're going to do that with more diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely.
I can feel myself getting very passionate and very emotional right now. Emotion's not bad.
No.
Emotion's a good thing, right? I think, I encourage people to share their emotions. And if you think you're not an emotional person, just remember that anger and aggression are also emotions and also behaviors from being in an emotional state. So, I feel myself being very passionate and emotional right now. And honestly, it stems back to that experience that I had when I was in my 19, 20, and 21. It's just had that time in my life had such an impact on me. I don't ever want anybody to go through what I went through. And like I said, I wasn't molested. I wasn't raped. And the sad thing is I know women who have been. So what the fuck, guys?
Yes. No, and but you're absolutely right. And you know what? To your point, passion and emotion are going to be what leads to change, especially in this industry. I mean, people talking the way that you're talking right now, makes people want to listen. And that's what we need. We need people to listen. So, no, I'm super glad that you shared that story. And rather than anybody view that as, like I said, a reason not to pursue this line of work, view it as a lesson learned before even entering into this line of work, because it's invaluable. It's invaluable, and it needs to change, obviously, which is the biggest thing.
People are going to say that in the trades, you need to have a thick skin, and you're going to get people who say, don't be a pussy. Don't be a snowflake. Don't be this. Don't be that. And you know what? Here's what I say to that. I have thick skin. I have skin thick enough to ask for respect because I know some people are not going to agree with me. And I know some people are going to try to make me feel lesser than I am. And that's having thick skin.
Absolutely.
Having thick skin is asking for the respect you deserve.
Absolutely. Couldn't have put it better myself. I love that you said that because you're absolutely right. I hear that all the time. You need thick skin, but that is absolutely part of it, is being able to say, I need your respect. That's thick skin.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe how fast this hour flew by. We're going to have to wrap it up.
Me too.
But that wonderful, wonderful perspective. Fantastic insight. Actually, I've got one question for you before we wrap it up, because this is something that I ask everybody, so I've got to sneak it in here. We talked earlier in this episode about definitions of success, right? And some of the things that I like to point that towards is how it can be achieved in the trades, right? How you can achieve your definition of success. So above all else, I'm curious, Siobhan, what is your ultimate definition of success?
That's a really difficult question to answer.
Yes, it is.
And I am going to be completely honest when I say I am my own worst critic. I go to therapy to not be so hard on myself. And so normally I would say I'm not a successful person, because that is something that I at times truly believe. But, in working with a therapist, I am now able to see that success can be attributed, or success for me personally can be defined by my variety of experience. I've been able to work for a magician. I've been able to set up a show at the mouth of a volcano. I have my hand in the entertainment sector, the energy sector. I would even say that through my fall protection and rescue knowledge, I can have a hand in construction if I wish to go that route. I have my hand in entrepreneurship, because right now I am building an ed tech startup to help people who are trying to figure out what they want to do for a career. And so that's success to me. I guess it's variety of experience and growth.
Excellent. Well put. Well said. Siobhan, thank you so much. I wish we had 16 hours to talk, because I feel like I could just talk to you forever. But I really appreciate you coming on the show. Where can people find you?
You guys can find me at anywhere where you follow social media, Industry Explorers. If you want to send me a DM through any of those platforms where you can send a message to Industry Explorers, that's where I'm at. That's what I'm building right now. You can also email me at Siobhan, Siobhan, at industryexplorers.com.
Awesome. Siobhan, thank you so much for lending me your valuable time today.
Thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate it.